It's incredibly difficult to prove that something that might happen to you, that will happen to you. And it's incredibly difficult to prove why as well. It's incredibly difficult to prove that you believe in one God and not another. It's incredibly difficult to prove that you're gay if you're from a country where gay people are persecuted. It's incredibly difficult to prove these things. And one of the key things that we would argue at Asylum Aid is that firstly, the right standard of proof needs to be applied. So it's not like in a criminal case, legally speaking. The asylum system, you don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The standard in asylum cases is a reasonable likelihood. Now, we often find that the Home Office is not applying that standard of proof. And the reason why the standard is low is because firstly, it's recognized in law that it's incredibly difficult to prove. And secondly, these are questions of life or death, and therefore it is, the wrong decision based on the fact, oh, well, you couldn't prove you were in this place at that time, can mean somebody dies. So it's very important that that standard is not set too high to an unreasonable level. But it's also about this culture of disbelief in the Home Office, whereby their starting point seems to be one of, well, let's catch out the liars, let's see where we can trip them up, let's ask them this question at the beginning and then get them stressed out throughout the interview and then go back, oh, but you said this day, and now you're saying the week after. Well, that doesn't seem right. And then people get more stressed because they feel that they're not being believed and they've gone through traumatic experiences, so they're already in sometimes a slightly stressed out mental state. And then, and then that makes it more difficult for them to remember the details, and it becomes a vicious circle. Whereas if the Home Office came from a starting point of saying, okay, we know that this person comes from an area where these things are happening, perhaps we can save somebody's life, perhaps we can offer somebody protection. And that psychological starting point for the interview, I think would allow people to open up more, would allow them to tell a clearer story, and that would probably help them to explain why they really are in need of protection. There's other elements. There's the fact that when women are interviewed, they're not guaranteed to have a woman interviewer and a woman interpreter. So, to talk, especially for women coming from the cultures that we're talking about, to talk about sexual assault or FGM in front of a man is simply unthinkable to them. So it becomes a lot more difficult. The whole process becomes sort of torturous in and of itself. And there's simple, easy ways to make that process just work better, and it would be more efficient, because well over a third of initial refusals are then overturned on appeal. So the courts find that the Home Office made the wrong decision, disbelieved someone where they should have been believed. And that's incredibly expensive for the taxpayer. And it takes years. And the individual concerned is unable to settle, suffering from their mental health, going through a torture system before it finally turns out that yes, we should have protected you all along and helped you to be part of our society and to start being a citizen who contributes. And instead we drag people through a brutal system that takes forever, and it's wasteful. It's so wasteful of money, of people's lives. We need to open this up and have a whole new approach within the Home Office.